The snow fell in thick, silent curtains outside the kitchen window as I stood at the sink, my hands submerged in lukewarm dishwater. Christmas lights from the neighbor's house cast colored shadows across our backyard, turning the fresh snow into a canvas of reds, greens, and blues. It should have been beautiful. It should have felt magical. Instead, each twinkling light felt like a tiny accusation, a reminder of everything that had gone wrong this Christmas night. "Sarah, where are the batteries?" Michael's voice boomed from the living room, sharp and impatient. I closed my eyes and took a slow breath, watching the steam rise from the water. "They're in the junk drawer, second from the left," I called back, keeping my voice steady. "They're not here." "Yes, they are. Look behind the takeout menus." A crash echoed through the house, the sound of the drawer being yanked out too hard, its contents spilling across the hardwood floor. I felt each muscle in my shoulders tense, bracing for what I knew was coming. "This is ridiculous." Michael stormed into the kitchen, his face flushed, still wearing the reindeer sweater his mother had given him 3 Christmases ago. "Why can't anything in this house ever be where it's supposed to be?" I turned slowly, water dripping from my hands onto the floor. For a moment, I saw him as he used to be, the man who had proposed to me on a snowy evening much like this one, who had gotten down on one knee in Central Park with snowflakes catching in his dark hair, his eyes full of nervous hope. That man seemed like a stranger now. "Michael, they're right where I said. You just need to look properly. I don't need you to tell me how to look for things." His voice rose, and I saw our son Tommy's small face peek around the corner from the living room, his eyes wide and worried. He clutched the new fire truck we'd given him that morning, the joy from earlier completely drained from his 7-year-old features. That's when something inside me shifted. Not with a bang, but with a quiet, final click, like a door closing softly but irrevocably. "Tommy, honey, why don't you go play in your room for a bit?" I said gently, my eyes never leaving Michael's face. "But Dad said he'd set up my racetrack." "Now!" Michael roared, spinning toward our son. "Can't you see the adults are talking?" Tommy's face crumpled. He turned and ran, his small feet thundering up the stairs, and I heard his bedroom door slam shut. The sound reverberated through the house like a gunshot. The silence that followed was deafening. Michael turned back to me, and for a fleeting second, I saw regret flicker across his features. But it vanished as quickly as it had appeared, replaced by defensive anger. "Don't look at me like that," he said, his voice lower but no less hard. "You're the one who's been making everything difficult today. The turkey was dry. You invited your mother without asking me. You bought Tommy that expensive fire truck when we talked about keeping gifts simple this year." Each accusation landed like a stone. I dried my hands on the dish towel, folding it with deliberate care and hanging it on the oven handle. When I finally spoke, my voice was calm, too calm. "The turkey was dry because you insisted on watching the game instead of helping me time it properly. I invited my mother because she's alone and it's Christmas, and I told you about it 3 weeks ago. And I bought Tommy that fire truck because his father has been too busy with work to notice that his son has been asking for one since September." Michael's jaw tightened. "Oh, here we go. Poor Sarah, doing everything by herself. Poor Sarah, married to a monster who works 60 hours a week to keep this family fed and housed." "I work 40 hours a week too, Michael. And I do the shopping, the cooking, the cleaning, the homework help, the doctor's appointments, the school projects." "You don't get to keep score," he shouted, slamming his palm against the counter. "This is marriage, not some competition." I flinched, not from fear, but from the sheer weight of recognition. This was it. This was the moment I had been heading toward for months, maybe years, without fully admitting it to myself. All the small resentments, the swallowed retorts, the nights lying awake wondering when we had stopped being a team and become adversaries living under the same roof. "You're right," I said quietly. "It's not a competition. It's supposed to be a partnership. Something in my tone must have registered because Michael's anger faltered. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'm tired, Michael. I'm so incredibly tired. We're all tired, Sarah. That's life. That's being an adult. I shook my head slowly, feeling tears prick at the corners of my eyes but refusing to let them fall. Not now. Not yet. No, that's not what I mean. I'm tired of being yelled at. I'm tired of walking on eggshells, wondering which version of you is going to come home from work. I'm tired of making excuses for you to your son. I'm tired of trying to remember the man I married and seeing only this angry stranger in front of me. Michael's face went pale. For a long moment, he just stared at me, and I could see his mind working, trying to formulate a response, perhaps a defense. But what could he say? Everything I had spoken was the truth, and we both knew it. Sarah, he started, but I held up my hand. I think you should sleep in the guest room tonight. We'll talk more in the morning, but right now, I need to go check on our son. The son you just screamed at on Christmas night. I walked past him, my legs shaking but my resolve firm. As I climbed the stairs, I could feel his eyes on my back, could sense the weight of everything unsaid hanging in the air between us. But I didn't turn around. I couldn't. Tommy's room was dark except for his nightlight, a moon that projected stars across his ceiling. He was curled up in bed, his face buried in his pillow, his small shoulders shaking with silent sobs. The fire truck sat abandoned on his rug. "Hey, baby," I whispered, sitting on the edge of his bed and running my hand through his soft hair. "I'm so sorry. Why does Daddy yell so much?" His voice was muffled by the pillow, broken by hiccups. My heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. "I don't know, sweetheart, but it's not your fault. It's never your fault, okay? You are a wonderful, kind, perfect boy, and none of this is because of you." He rolled over and looked up at me with those big brown eyes. Michael's eyes, I realized with a pang, filled with a sadness no 7-year-old should have to carry. "Does Daddy love us?" "Oh, Tommy." I gathered him into my arms, holding him tight. "Yes, Daddy loves us. But sometimes sometimes we forget how to show love the right way. Sometimes we let our anger and stress make us act in ways that hurt the people we love most. Like when I got mad and broke Connor's toy at school?" "Yes, kind of like that. But you apologized to Connor, remember? And you worked hard to save your allowance to buy him a new one." Tommy nodded against my shoulder. "Daddy doesn't say sorry." Those 4 words hung in the air, an indictment more powerful than any argument I could make. From the mouths of babes, as they say. My son had articulated in one simple sentence what I had been struggling to express for months. We sat together in the darkness, his stars slowly rotating across the walls, and I made a decision. Not a rash one, not born from anger or hurt, but a clear-eyed choice made from love. Love for my son, and yes, even love for Michael, because sometimes loving someone means refusing to enable their worst behaviors. "Tomorrow is a new day," I told Tommy, kissing the top of his head. "How about we spend it doing something fun, just you and me? Maybe we could go to the science museum you've been wanting to visit." His face brightened slightly. "Really? But what about Daddy? Daddy needs to think about some things. And you and I could use some special time together. What do you say?" "Okay, Mommy." He yawned, exhaustion from the emotional evening taking its toll. "Can we see the dinosaurs?" "We can see all the dinosaurs you want." I stayed with him until he fell asleep, listening to his breathing even out, watching his face relax into the peaceful innocence of childhood. Then I crept out, closing his door softly behind me. The house was quiet now. As I passed the guest room, I could see light seeping under the door, could hear Michael moving around inside. Part of me wanted to knock, to go in and try to fix things immediately, to smooth everything over the way I always had before. But I walked past, went into our bedroom, my bedroom for tonight at least, and closed the door. I didn't sleep much that night. Instead, I lay in the darkness, listening to the wind howl outside and watching the shadows of snow-laden branches dance across the ceiling. I thought about the past 8 years of marriage, trying to pinpoint when things had started to go wrong. There was no single moment, I realized. It had been a gradual erosion, like water wearing away stone, so slow you don't notice until suddenly there's a canyon where solid ground used to be. Michael had always been driven, ambitious. When we met at that company Christmas party 9 years ago, I had been drawn to his passion, his energy, his certainty about what he wanted from life. He had plans, goals, dreams. I had been working a dead-end administrative job, drifting through my mid-20s without direction, and his purpose had been intoxicating. But somewhere along the way, ambition had curdled into resentment. The promotion he'd been promised went to someone else. The startup he invested in failed. The economy shifted, and suddenly his impressive salary wasn't as impressive anymore. He started working longer hours, taking on more responsibility, pushing harder, but it was never enough. And slowly, imperceptibly, he began to bring that anger home. At first, it was just irritability, then sharp comments, then raised voices. I told myself it was stress, that things would get better once his current project was finished, once this busy season was over, once. I became an expert in excuses, in spackling over the cracks in our foundation and pretending everything was fine. But tonight, something had broken that I couldn't repair with optimism and patience. Or maybe it wasn't that something had broken. Maybe I had finally admitted to myself that it had been broken for a long time, and I had been living in denial. When dawn finally crept through the curtains, painting the room in shades of gray and pink, I got up and dressed quietly. I could hear Tommy stirring in his room, the creak of his bed as he climbed out. I went to him, helped him pick out warm clothes for our museum adventure, and together we tiptoed downstairs. Michael was already in the kitchen, standing at the coffee maker in yesterday's clothes, his hair disheveled, dark circles under his eyes. He looked up when we entered, his expression unreadable. "I made coffee," he said quietly. "Thank you." I busied myself with getting breakfast ready for Tommy, his favorite cinnamon cereal with sliced bananas. "Tommy, Michael started, then stopped. Our son looked at him warily, hanging back near my legs. "I'm sorry I yelled at you last night. That wasn't okay." Tommy nodded but didn't say anything. Michael's face fell, and I felt a pang of sympathy despite everything. He was trying, at least. But I also knew from hard experience that trying once, in the cold light of morning after a terrible night, didn't mean the pattern would change. "Tommy and I are going to the Science Museum today," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "Oh." Michael looked between us. Should I come?" "I think Tommy and I need some time together. And I think you need some time to think about things. Sarah, please. Can we talk? This evening, after Tommy goes to bed." I poured milk into my son's cereal and set it on the table. "We need to have a real conversation, Michael. Not a fight. A real, honest conversation about what's happening in this marriage and what we're going to do about it." He nodded slowly, wrapping both hands around his coffee mug like he was trying to draw warmth from it. Okay, yes. We'll talk tonight." The museum was exactly what Tommy and I needed. We spent hours wandering through exhibits, looking at dinosaur bones and ancient artifacts, conducting experiments at the interactive displays. Tommy's laughter, genuine, unrestrained joy, was like medicine for my soul. We ate overpriced pizza in the cafeteria and split an enormous chocolate chip cookie. For a few precious hours, the weight lifted from my shoulders. But as we drove home through the early winter darkness, that weight settled back down, heavier than before. The lights were on in our house, warm and inviting from the outside. If a stranger looked at it, they would see a picture-perfect suburban home, would imagine a happy family inside. They wouldn't know about the fractures, the fault lines running through the foundation. Tommy fell asleep almost immediately after dinner and bath time, exhausted from our day out. I tucked him in, kissed his forehead, and then, with my heart pounding, made my way back downstairs. Michael was in the living room, sitting on the couch in the dim light. He'd cleaned up, the batteries and menus had been returned to the drawer, the dishes I'd left in the sink were washed and put away, the living room was straightened. Small gestures, but I recognized them as an olive branch of sorts. I sat in the armchair across from him, maintaining physical distance. We needed that space right now. I've been thinking all day, he said without preamble. About what you said last night. About being tired. About not recognizing me anymore. He paused, his hands clasped between his knees. I didn't realize. I knew things weren't perfect, but I didn't realize how bad it had gotten. How bad I had gotten. I waited, saying nothing. He needed to get this out. I've been angry for so long, Sarah. At work, at the world, at myself for not being where I thought I'd be by now. And I brought all of that home with me. I took it out on you and Tommy, and that's... His voice cracked. That's unforgivable. It's not unforgivable, I said quietly. But it can't continue. Not like this. He looked up at me, and I saw tears in his eyes, the first tears I'd seen from him in years. I don't want to lose you. I don't want to lose my family. Then something has to change, Michael. Not just for a few days or weeks, but really, fundamentally change. Because I meant what I said last night. I'm tired. I'm tired of being the emotional punching bag. I'm tired of our son being afraid of you. I'm tired of living like we're roommates at best and enemies at worst. Tell me what to do. Tell me how to fix this. I shook my head. That's part of the problem. I can't fix this for you. You have to do the work. Therapy, maybe. Anger management. I don't know exactly what you need, but you need to figure it out and commit to it. Because I will not raise our son in a house filled with yelling and tension and walking on eggshells. Are you saying you want a divorce? The question hung between us, heavy and terrifying. Did I? 24 hours ago, I might have said no immediately. But now, after a night and day of clarity, I wasn't sure. I'm saying that I need to see real change before I can answer that question. I'm saying that I love you, Michael, or at least I love who you used to be, who I believe you still could be underneath all this anger. But I love myself and our son more than I'm willing to sacrifice our peace and well-being. Michael was crying openly now, his shoulders shaking. I'm so sorry, Sarah. I'm so sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen. I know. But intent doesn't erase impact. I stood up, suddenly exhausted. I think you should stay in the guest room for a while. Not because I'm trying to punish you, but because we both need space to think clearly. And tomorrow, I want you to start looking into therapists. Individual therapy for you, couples counseling for us if you're willing. Yes, anything. I'll do anything. We'll see. I moved toward the stairs, then paused. Michael, I meant what I said about loving who you used to be. I want to believe that person is still in there somewhere. But you have to want to find him again. I can't want it for you. I went upstairs, leaving him sitting in the darkness. As I brushed my teeth and got ready for bed, I caught sight of myself in the mirror. I looked older than I had yesterday, but there was something else in my eyes too, a spark of strength, of self-respect that had been missing. The next morning brought another conversation, this one calmer but no less serious. Michael had made an appointment with a therapist for later that week. He'd also looked into anger management programs and found one that came highly recommended. He was making efforts, taking concrete steps. It was a start. But I knew that this was just the beginning of a long journey, for both of us. Change doesn't happen overnight, especially when it comes to patterns ingrained over years. There would be setbacks, struggles, moments when I would doubt whether we could make it through this. In the days that followed, a new rhythm emerged in our household. Michael moved into the guest room, giving us the physical space that translated into emotional breathing room. He was gentler with Tommy, more patient. He came home earlier from work, making a conscious effort to be present for dinner. When I saw frustration building in him, he would excuse himself and take a walk around the block rather than lashing out. It wasn't perfect. There were still tense moments, still times when old patterns threatened to resurface. But there was a new awareness, a consciousness about our interactions that hadn't existed before. And crucially, Michael was doing the work, attending therapy every week, participating in his anger management program, reading books on emotional regulation and healthy communication. 3 weeks after that terrible Christmas night, we had our first couples counseling session. Dr. Martinez was a small woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She listened to both of us, really listened, and then gave us tools to start rebuilding our communication from the ground up. The thing about anger, she told us in one session, is that it's usually a secondary emotion. Underneath it is often fear, hurt, shame, disappointment. Michael, when you're yelling at Sarah about batteries or dry turkey, what are you really angry about? It took several sessions for Michael to be able to answer that question honestly. But gradually, he began to peel back the layers. He was angry at himself for not meeting his own expectations. He was afraid of being seen as a failure. He was hurt by setbacks at work and in life that he felt he should have been able to control. And rather than dealing with those uncomfortable, vulnerable feelings, he had translated them into anger and directed them at the people closest to him. Understanding didn't excuse the behavior, but it did provide a roadmap for healing. For my part, I had to learn to stop making excuses for him, to stop smoothing everything over and pretending problems didn't exist. I had to learn to voice my needs and boundaries clearly, without apology. Dr. Martinez helped me see that my tendency to minimize and accommodate had actually enabled Michael's worst behaviors by never forcing him to confront the consequences of his actions. You can't save someone from themselves, she told me. The kindest thing you can do, for both of you, is to let him experience the full weight of his choices. Spring arrived slowly that year. Snow melted, revealing the brown grass underneath. Crocuses pushed through the cold earth. Trees began to bud. And in our house, something that had been frozen for a long time began, tentatively, to thaw. Michael and I went on our first date night in over a year. Dinner at a small Italian restaurant, conversation that felt almost like it had in the early days. He told me about breakthroughs in therapy, about recognizing patterns he'd inherited from his own father, about learning to sit with uncomfortable emotions instead of transforming them into rage. I feel like I'm learning how to be human again, he told me over tiramisu. Like I'd been this tightly wound ball of stress and anger for so long that I'd forgotten how to just be. I'm proud of you, I said, and meant it. This kind of work isn't easy. I should have done it years ago, before it got this bad, before I hurt you and Tommy. Maybe. But we can't change the past. We can only decide what we do moving forward. He reached across the table and took my hand. Do you think we're going to make it? I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw not the angry stranger from Christmas night, but glimpses of the man I had fallen in love with, mixed with someone new. Someone more self-aware, more humble, more human. I think we have a chance, I said honestly. A real chance. But it's going to take continued work from both of us. I'm willing to do that work. For as long as it takes. By the time summer rolled around, Michael moved back into our bedroom. It wasn't a decision made lightly or quickly. We discussed it in therapy, made sure we were both ready, established protocols for if old patterns started to resurface. But it felt right, like a milestone earned rather than a box checked. Tommy noticed the changes too. He started bringing his father drawings again, the way he used to. He asked Michael to play catch in the backyard. He laughed more freely, the wariness that had crept into his eyes slowly fading. One night in July, as we were putting Tommy to bed together, a new routine we'd established, our son looked up at Michael and said, "Daddy, you don't yell anymore." Michael's eyes filled with tears. He knelt down beside Tommy's bed and pulled him into a hug. "You're right, buddy. And I'm sorry I used to. That wasn't fair to you. It's okay. People make mistakes. You just have to say sorry and try to do better, right, Mommy?" I nodded, my own eyes stinging. "That's right, baby." After Tommy fell asleep, Michael and I stood in the hallway, and he pulled me into his arms. "Thank you," he whispered into my hair. "For what?" "For not giving up. For that night, Christmas night. For finally making me see what I was doing, what I was becoming. If you hadn't put your foot down, if you hadn't been strong enough to demand change, I don't know where we'd be now. Probably divorced. Definitely miserable." I leaned back to look at him. I didn't do it to be strong. I did it because I didn't have any other choice. I'd reached my breaking point. I know. And that's what I needed, to see that I was about to lose everything that mattered. Sometimes people need to stand at the edge of the cliff before they're willing to change direction. We stood there for a long moment, holding each other in the dim hallway light, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Real, genuine hope for our future together. That's not to say everything was perfect from then on. Life isn't a fairy tale, and recovery isn't linear. There were still hard days, still moments when old triggers threatened to bring back old patterns. But now we had tools to deal with them. We had communication skills, emotional awareness, and a commitment to doing the hard work of maintaining a healthy relationship. The following Christmas was different. We decorated the tree together, all three of us, while holiday music played and hot chocolate steamed in our mugs. Michael and I worked side by side in the kitchen preparing Christmas dinner, moving in sync, communicating easily. And when things got stressful, because holidays are inherently stressful, we handled it together as a team. Tommy asked for a robot kit this year, and Michael spent hours on Christmas morning helping him put it together, patient and engaged, laughing at their mistakes and celebrating their successes. Watching them together, I felt a warmth in my chest that had nothing to do with a fireplace burning nearby. That evening, after Tommy had gone to bed, Michael and I sat on the couch, wrapped in blankets, watching the lights twinkle on the tree. "Do you remember last Christmas?" he asked quietly. "How could I forget? I was such an asshole." "Yes, you were." He laughed, surprising me. "No argument. No, oh, it wasn't that bad?" "Nope. You were an asshole. You yelled at me about batteries, made Christmas dinner miserable, and terrified our son. It was bad, Michael. And yet here we are." "Here we are," I agreed, snuggling closer to him. "But we're here because you did the work. Because you made real, lasting changes. Because you proved over months and months that you were serious about being better. I never want to be that person again. That angry, bitter man. He was miserable, and he made everyone around him miserable too. Then don't be. Keep going to therapy. Keep using your tools. Keep being present for your family. Keep being the person you've worked so hard to become." He kissed the top of my head. "What was waiting for me, Sarah? After that night I yelled at you, what was waiting that I had no idea about?" I thought about his question, about all that had unfolded over the past year. "A choice," I finally said. "The choice to either lose everything or fight to become someone better. The chance to save your family, but only if you were willing to save yourself first. A whole new life, really, but you had to be brave enough to face yourself honestly to get there." "Best worst thing that ever happened to me," he murmured. "What do you mean?" "That night. It was terrible. Probably the lowest point of my life. But it was also the wake-up call I needed. If I hadn't pushed you to that breaking point, if you hadn't finally demanded change, I might have just kept on that path indefinitely, getting worse and worse until there really was no coming back from it. I understood what he meant. Sometimes the worst moments are the ones that catalyze transformation. Sometimes we have to break before we can heal properly. Can I tell you something? I said. Always. There were moments in those first few weeks when I didn't think we'd make it. When I thought maybe the damage was too deep, the patterns too entrenched. I had started looking at apartments, just in case. I had talked to a lawyer, very quietly, very discreetly, just to know what my options were. Michael stiffened slightly, and I felt him swallow hard. I didn't know that. I didn't tell you because I didn't want to motivate you through fear. If you were going to change, it had to be because you genuinely wanted to, not because you were afraid of consequences. But you stayed. You gave me the chance. I gave us the chance. But Michael, you have to understand, if things hadn't changed, if you hadn't done the work, I would have left. I loved you, but I loved myself and Tommy more. I still do. Good, he said firmly. You should. Never compromise that again. If I ever start sliding back into old patterns, I want you to call me on it immediately. Don't wait. Don't make excuses. Hold me accountable. I will. I promise. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the lights, listening to the house settle around us. Outside, snow had started to fall again, just as it had been falling that terrible Christmas night a year ago. But everything was different now. You know what the best part is? Michael said eventually. What's that? Tommy. Seeing him relax, seeing him not flinch when I raise my voice even slightly. Seeing him run to me when he's excited about something instead of hiding behind you. Getting to be a real dad to him instead of someone he's afraid of. I nodded, feeling tears prick my eyes. That might be the most important change of all. It is. Because at the end of the day, he's the one who deserved better all along. He didn't ask to be born into this mess. And he deserves to grow up in a house filled with love and respect, not anger and fear. He's got that now. We all do. Michael pulled me closer, and I rested my head on his shoulder, feeling safe and loved in a way I hadn't for far too long. The road here had been difficult, painful, often uncertain, requiring reserves of strength I hadn't known I possessed. But we'd made it. We'd walked through fire and come out the other side, not unscathed, but stronger for the trials we'd endured. As midnight approached, Michael stood up and extended his hand to me. Dance with me. There's no music, so we'll make our own. I took his hand and let him pull me to my feet. We swayed together in the living room, surrounded by twinkling lights and the soft glow of the fireplace, moving to a rhythm only we could hear. And in that moment, I realized something profound. The man I'd fallen in love with 9 years ago wasn't gone after all. He'd just been buried under layers of anger and pain and disappointment. But now he was back, refined by the fire, humbled by his own capacity for darkness, and committed to staying in the light. "Merry Christmas, Sarah," he whispered. "Merry Christmas, Michael." And this time, it really was. Looking back now, years later, I can say with certainty that Christmas night when Michael yelled at me was both the worst and best thing that could have happened to our marriage. It was the crisis point that forced us to confront truths we'd been avoiding, to make changes that were long overdue, to choose actively and consciously whether our marriage was worth fighting for. The answer, it turned out, was yes, but only if we were both willing to do the work. Only if we were both willing to face hard truths, make difficult changes, and commit to a daily practice of choosing love over anger, communication over assumption, partnership over domination. That night, Michael had no idea what was waiting for him afterward. He had no idea he was standing at a crossroads, that his next choices would determine the entire trajectory of his life and family. He had no idea that his wife's quiet strength would be the catalyst for his transformation. But I knew, even in that terrible moment on Christmas night, standing at the kitchen sink with my hands in dishwater while my husband raged and my son cried upstairs, that something had to give. I knew that we couldn't continue on the path we were on without destroying ourselves and each other in the process. What was waiting for him was a mirror, one that reflected back not the person he thought he was, but the person he'd actually become. And then, once he could see himself clearly, what waited was a choice. Stay that person, or do the hard, painful, necessary work of becoming someone better. He chose the work. He chose us. He chose to change. And that choice, made every day through small actions and large commitments, through therapy sessions and honest conversations, through moments of backsliding and renewed dedication, that choice saved our family. Sometimes love means holding firm boundaries. Sometimes it means refusing to accept the unacceptable, no matter how much it hurts. Sometimes it means being willing to walk away if someone won't do their part to make things better. But sometimes, if you're very lucky, love means watching someone you care about face their demons, do battle with their worst impulses, and emerge on the other side as a better version of themselves. Love means celebrating those hard-won victories together. Love means building something new from the ashes of what was broken. That's what was waiting for Michael after that Christmas night. That's what we found together, through darkness and difficulty, through pain and perseverance. A second chance. A new beginning. A love forged not in the easy moments, but in the hardest ones, stronger, deeper, and infinitely more precious for having been tested and proven true. And every Christmas since, as we gather together, Michael, Tommy, and I'm reminded of how far we've come from that terrible night. I'm grateful for the breaking point that forced us to rebuild properly, from the foundation up. I'm thankful for the strength to demand better, and for the grace to accept real change when it came. Most of all, I'm grateful for the family we've become. Not perfect, but honest. Not without struggles, but with the tools to face them together. Not defined by our worst moments, but by our choice to grow beyond them. That's the gift that was waiting for us, wrapped not in shiny paper and bows, but in hard truths and harder work. And it's the gift that keeps giving, every single day we choose to honor it.